UN Special Representative on Sexual Violence in Conflict informed the UN Security Council that there are reasonable grounds to believe that conflict-related sexual violence, including rape and gang rape, occurred on October 7th. The UN team found clear and convincing information on sexual assault against the Hamas captives. To talk more on this scathing UN report, we're now being joined by Mr. Alex Trimon, CEO and Jerusalem Bureau Chief of Jewish News Syndicate. Thank you so much for taking our time and joining us here on WION, Mr. Alex.
Thank you for having me.
Right, now, Mr. Alex, now some scathing revelations out there. First of all, can you take us through the crucial findings of this UN report?
Oh, absolutely. And after looking at 5,000 pictures and over 50 hours of video that was taken on October 7th, both from Israeli security cameras and also from the GoPro videos that were taken by the perpetrators of the attack on October 7th themselves, they were able to determine very clearly that there was incidents of rape, gang rape, torture, fondling, even in some cases, the raping of dead corpses that took place on October 7th, and that also in interviewing over 34 witnesses of the atrocities, including survivors and first responders and also families of hostages, that there's enough evidence to suggest that many of those that are remaining in captivity have also been subject to continual sexual violence.
Right, Mr. Alex, to speak of how the UN has clearly said that there are reasonable and convincing information to believe that such violence, it may still be going on as we speak against the Hamas captives. My question to you is that, knowing all of this, why is there no action being taken against them?
Well, that's what Israel wants to know, and it's been almost 5 months since the war started, since October 7th, and yet still it's only now that this report is coming out when Israel had already demonstrated the barbaric nature of the atrocities, and it took the UN a long time to recognize it. And I think that it puts into context the overall war inside Gaza now, that there's a reason why that there's a Israeli military incursion into the Gaza Strip. You have to take out the organization that permitted these attacks and perpetrated these attacks. And at the same time, as we've said, that there are at least 134 people still missing, believed to be held hostage inside the Gaza Strip, and they need to be taken out.
Absolutely. How do you see this report impacting the ongoing Israel-Hamas war?
Unfortunately, I don't think it's going to have much of an impact on the overall war. We see that the UN institutions are basically holding Israel responsible for everything that's taking place in the Strip, basically forgetting what took place on October 7th. This might be a short-lived reminder, but I don't expect the UN to change its course with regards to pushing Israel towards an immediate ceasefire and alleviating the humanitarian crisis in Gaza. And I also don't see Israel, letting up on its campaign. Regardless of this report, they're going to continue to go until they feel that they've completely eliminated Hamas, both as a terror entity and a military, as well as a political entity.
Right, in such a scenario, what is your assessment of the latest on-ground situation? On one hand, we have the report that highlights the sexual assault against the Hamas captives and Israelis. On the other hand, almost 30,000 Palestinians have been killed in the ongoing war, with no sight of a ceasefire.
I think it's important to note that the 30,000 that the Gazan Health Ministry reports dead, which are not verified numbers, that Israel is saying that of those killed are at least 11,000 Hamas terror operatives. Okay, so that's very important. It's not that Israel's killed 30,000 Palestinian civilians, that at least 11,000 of them have been identified as operatives. And that's taking place in an environment in which those that are shooting at the IDF are doing so in civilian clothes from in civilian neighborhoods. So the fact that Israel has managed to avoid mass casualties, and in such a situation, you could have imagined 10 times as many casualties Israel's really gone to incredible lengths to reduce the amount of civilian casualties. I think that their actions inside Gaza will be studied by other militaries on how to avoid and limit civilian casualties in war in the future.
Right, just to interrupt you there, but there are 30,000 Palestinians who have also been killed, and most of them include women and children. There were questions being raised if Israel could maybe be more precise with its attacks against the Hamas militants and not maybe attacking the residential areas as a whole.
Yeah, I think Israel would prefer to do that. First of all, they're being as precise as they can in a war situation, and second, they're being shot at from in civilian neighborhoods by people dressed in civilian clothes, right? If you would have a situation in which Hamas presented itself as a military that tried to avoid its own civilian casualties and wanted to fight Israel, near the border or something like that, then Israel would not be operating in civilian areas. I was just last week down at the major command and control center of the war near the Gaza border, and I was asking the people, I said, how many buildings are you finding weapons and tunnel shafts? And they said over 90% of the buildings that they're going into in the Gaza Strip, which are residential buildings, schools, mosques, hospitals, all have weapons and tunnel shafts in them. So how do you avoid more civilian casualties when you're fighting in a civilian environment?
Right, Mr. Alex, thank you so much for taking our time and joining us here on WION.
Thank you for having me.